So we will begin first and foremost with approval of the minutes from our July 19th PAC meeting. Do we have any edits to make to the meeting minutes from the 19th?
Yes. Just one edit that I noticed. So I'm listed. I was at the meeting. I'm listed as present as well as absent with Caroline Fredrickson. I'm not sure if she was out or present, but I know I wasn't. So if that could just be edited.
Sorry, I was away for July.
Gotcha. Okay, so Carlos, if you can edit it where Jerome is not listed as that he was not present and only Caroline missed our July 19th meeting.
Okay, so Jerome, you were present at the last meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that change. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so with that one change to the attendance, do we have a motion to approve the minutes with that one edit that lists Jerome as present and only Caroline as absent?
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Branson. Do I have a second? There we go. Okay, Carlos, so the minutes are approved with that edit. Thank you so much. Okay, let's jump right to subcommittee updates. So we had a short meeting, obviously, on July 19th. So this is about 3 weeks or so post that meeting. I want to hear from the subcommittees, including any analysis done on the audit recommendations that Carlos sent. I will start with Shabab and her crew, because Shabab, I want to get you in case your internet goes out again. So I want to make sure I at least get you. So I'll start with your crew and then we can pass it to another subcommittee.
We will kick it over to Jen. I know we had our subcommittee meeting canceled this last cycle. But Jen, if you have any thoughts as our lovely subcommittee chair, please go ahead.
Well, we had our full collaboration meeting on the 29th and it was great. Lots of really great input from, I mean, there's just a lot happening. I know that there was emails going around at one point about the 6 social workers and where they are. They are hired and they're in the middle of their CIT training, as far as I know. And that was like a week or two ago. They may be done. I think it's a 2 or 3 week training. I also forwarded everybody in the PAC late this afternoon. I forwarded the link to sign up for Cahoots. It's on the 25th. It's a 2-hour session and anybody can sign up. There is a note that they thought that it could only take 100 people, but they're working on that capacity so more people can be enrolled. I was looking through the lovely green parts of this, which is my part, I think, or our part, Shabab and Jerome. And there was a couple things that I could answer really quickly about the jails and the prison and what the community or mental health work there. There are 2 programs embedded in there already. There's the JASS, which is the jail assisted services, and the MAT, which is medicated assisted treatment. That does happen inside those walls. I don't have a ton of detail, but I spoke with Dr. Santiago this morning about it. And he said there are things there. I know that they want to improve, and but that does exist. There's a lot of in here could be condensed into collaboration between 911, police, fire, rescue, all of that. And that is all happening. There's another subcommittee being formed called something integrated call center, blah, 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 something. And they're going to be meeting in the end of August. And that is representatives from police and EMS and fire and Every Mind and they're all coming together to really try to figure out how to get that list of questions that they ask at 911 to be working for all calls that come in, and who's going to be trained to decide where those calls go and who to dispatch to those calls. And there's a lot of conversations going on about exactly how those calls come in, because sometimes it's a neighbor, sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's a passerby, and their language is usually not what we need to be able to decipher a situation. So there's lots of conversations happening about that. I know the CIT part, they're still hoping to have more super CIT folks. And the two, what are they, the like dispatch areas, there's now 3 in the county. That Silver Spring is open, Germantown is open, and Picard has 2 more beds at the crisis center. So there's stuff happening, and Shepherd Pratt has their program now working up here in Germantown and Boland for inpatient residential psychiatric beds. There are 6 open at this point with the capacity of 16 eventually, but they have to staff up. So there's tons of pieces all happening. But that's what I got through here. I mean, there's a lot of real like down and dirty kind of things here that I'm not in control of, you know, but I can at least keep everybody apprised of how, like the union stuff, that's not my gig. So,
No, but
Jen,
thank
very
you
quickly.
Oh, go ahead, Shabab, sorry.
Jen, very quickly, I know you sent out an email about the Cahoots training, but I couldn't find the link there. So if you could just maybe take a look at that and resend.
oh, I'll look again. I thought oh, okay. It's down,
Maybe-
but I'll look again.
Okay.
I'll look again. Yeah.
So that was one. And the next thing was the integrated call center meeting at the end of August. Is that something commissioners are able to attend?
I don't know that. I think at this, I don't know. I guess I could ask, because right now it's the decision maker kind like that are like, they're just talking like logistics, like how they dispatch and how like a big piece of it is relating to, you know, our part, the IDD population. A lot of times other police call Lori just on their phone because their kids aren't reported missing or the kids aren't reported out, you know, like, so that call is, you know, we got to really just work out that piece. I can ask, I'll definitely check, because I'm not even sure who all attends it. Yeah, so I'll check.
For sure, that would be super helpful. I mean, I know just given the conversations we had last meeting about getting first responders who are sort of mental health competent on the scene.
Yeah,
we
need like a little bit more behavior specific training, you know, with the CIT kind, you know, a little bit more strategies, you know, this is what you can do. I know they aren't all the same, but a few more behavior strategies would be helpful for everybody, I think. And maybe at least a couple of us could attend that call center meeting. You know, I don't know if they're going to want the whole pack in there, because this is just the real beginnings and brainstorming parts, but especially down the road, I think that is definitely possible. And then the email, yeah, I'll resend that link. Let me relook for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Jen, for the really good summary of, because you're right, there are some things in and this is just goes for all of us, there are some things in the recommendations that are real nitty gritty issues, right? Like almost niche issues in a lot of ways, right? And that's okay, right? Like those are very specific. The ones that I think we can really narrow down are the ones that I think fit into a lot of our specialty areas, right? Like a lot of us have worked with some of the people responsible for some of this stuff. Perfect segue, I think, to Jasmine and myself and the policing and schools subcommittee, the school safety subcommittee. So there's been a lot of talk amongst stakeholders in terms of who is going to be responsible for training MCPD in whatever model it is that they end up using for what policing in schools is supposed to look like. So next Monday on the 13th, Jasmine and I are going to meet with the restorative justice, the two full-time staff members from the restorative justice unit for MCPD, because it seems like it's going to fall on them and whoever they bring on to do a lot of this training, but it's still a little unclear. But Jasmine and I are going to meet with them next week to hear what it is that they're thinking of, because one of the recommendations was that to require, instead of heavy psychomotor training, to mandate more human relations training, bias-free procedural justice on an annual basis. And when I spoke to the restorative justice unit person who is working with the students to design some of these things, it seems like it's going to fall on her and her team to do that, and they haven't finalized that, but Jasmine and I are curious as to what that looks like. So once we meet with them, we'll be able to circle back, but we did and Sergeant Brewer, you should expect an email from us this week because we wanted to talk with you specifically around some of these training recommendations before we meet with them. So I would just say expect an email from Jasmine and I by tomorrow, no later than Wednesday, because we do have some questions there that we will then, the hope is that Sergeant Brewer would join us for that meeting. And then Sergeant Brewer, Jasmine, and I can touch base on just what some of these recommendations are. Are they realistic? Is it things that are already happening in the academy, right? And then we can kind of build on some of the things that are already happening, because as we talked in the last meeting, there is a lot that's already being done, right? And it's, okay, how do we build on what's being done to the point where we can then really feel good about a lot of this stuff that we're asking to be implemented, okay? So let's go to the next subcommittee. And this will be, discretionary policing. What is your update, please, and thank you.
Thank you, because I gotta go right now.
Yep, I got you, Ms. Branson. I got you.
We have not met about the audit review, so get that out the way. So we need to schedule something to get that done. The other thing is that Robin sent an email to you about the changing the data request so that it's a letter in preparation for the next public meeting. And so, I think we meaning this subcommittee, have to get moving on those two things. And I think maybe the summertime and living is easy. So we will be getting moving, and I gotta go because I gotta move on something else. So thank you all very much for indulging me. And if we are going to vote on the letter, I vote in favor of sending the draft that I saw today at like 10 minutes before I got on this call. Okay, so I'd like to be recorded in that way. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Branson. And just so everybody knows, and you'll receive something on Friday pertaining to what Ms. Branson mentioned about the debrief request that we're asking MCPD to do. It's based on the questions that we asked them about a month and a half ago. So now we're going to ask them to come and present to us on some questions that we had about the answers that they gave us. And that will precede the public hearing. But it's good to get that so then we can do the public hearing. Okay, so you'll get that on Friday. Okay, thank you, Ms. Branson. So we got discretionary policing in schools, and emergency response. Hiring and discipline, your update, please.
You're muted, Alicia.
Yeah, there I go. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yes, we've been going back and forth quite a bit by email, the three of us, sharing thoughts and ideas. And Caroline had an excellent idea, and we're going to implement that for the structure to have a very effective subcommittee meeting this Wednesday. We will be meeting this Wednesday to discuss the recommendations, but we are generally on the same page. We're in concurrence regarding the recommendations. And so we will be meeting this Wednesday, and we will have something definitive for our next to report out on. Caroline, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. The recommendations are very strong. They're not as nitty gritty as maybe in some of the other areas. So they're more generalized. And I think we'll probably, at least from my point of view, probably have less specific, suggestions there, but in general support. I would just say Eric and I have both done a little editing on the annual report too. So, which looks great. And I just, I can't help myself. I'm a copy editor by nature. So please forgive if I change anybody's language that they really like, and they can reject anything I put in there.
And I will say thank you to both you and Eric for both of your feedback on the letter. I gave it the once over, and I think honestly it captures the essence of what we wanted, and it does flow a little bit differently, which I think it'll be received differently, which I think that's one of the outcomes that we wanted, right? We didn't want folks to just be automatically defensive at either our perceived tone. So I appreciate both you and Eric and Jen and everybody who contributed to the feedback that we got. So thank you guys for that. I think that's a perfect transition. So you guys received the updated letter. I took all of the edits that you guys made, and we sent it out to you guys. Susan sent it to you guys. Do we have any edits that need to be made to it before we can approve it? The hope is that we can put it out tomorrow because we're voting to approve it now, but I open it up to the floor to see if there's any other edits that you guys want to make sure are captured in the proposed statement.
Yeah, and I just like Ms. Branson stated, I'm only voting in favor of the final edit that we received that Caroline and Eric had put their last markings on. So that's the only one I'm voting.
Same. Yep.
I
Yeah,
think
and
Eric just sent another
An email out. Yeah, I'm not sure if you wanted
Eric
to address
just sent
that
another
now.
one, and I haven't looked at it.
There were just 2 questions he asked. Why are appropriate edits being rejected, and why is this version being circulated? I'm not
But
sure.
we're not, what are we saying? That this is not the version that Caroline and Eric had?
I think I respectfully emailed Eric back that I think he's wrong. At least, and please correct me, Susan, you said this out. I looked at it over and it looked like it was the version that Eric and I had changed and not anything else that was included or deleted. So I don't know, Eric, I don't know where that comes from, but he can point out specific edits. I don't know.
Yeah, and I will say the version that got sent, which I pulled it up on my phone, if you see me looking to my side, is the one, the last edits that I received from Caroline were the ones that I included, and Eric's edits were included in that also. So I'm a little confused.
Maybe he's
maybe he didn't see the last one yet. I don't know.
Or maybe he's looking at another one. He's not here with us, right? I'm assuming he's not here with us.
I don't see him.
Okay.
I don't know who iPhone is. I don't know if he might be on the phone.
Well, how about Kim? Can you read or someone read the actual letter before we vote on it, so we can all make sure that we're voting on the same?
Yeah. I can share the.
I read it, and I read it just when Susan sent it out.
If Carlos can read it aloud or post it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Carlos, can you do me a favor? Share it on the screen, and I'll read it. And then we'll see if there's any edits that we need to make right now in real time. Just to make everybody, that way everybody knows what statement it is that they're voting for. I promise you guys, Nadia and I are not releasing a statement saying we want the Baconator back at Wendy's. That's not, or Burger King. That's not what we're doing.
All right. So here's the letter.
Okay. So originally the heading above was addressed to somebody different. We changed it so that way it could be addressed to County Executive Elric, Chief Jones, and State's Attorney John McCarthy. The date, obviously, August 10th, which is today, because that's when we sent it out to folks. Dear County Executive Elric, Chief Jones, and State's Attorney McCarthy, as you are aware, on July 16, 2021, 21-year-old Ryan LaRoe was killed in a police-involved shooting at a McDonald's drive-thru in Gaithersburg. The body camera footage that Chief Jones narrated over during his press conference on July 27, 2021, shows approximately 30 minutes of law enforcement officers' attempts to de-escalate the situation before the footage showed the officers opening fire. It has been confirmed that around 9:15 p.m., the Montgomery County Police Department received a call regarding Ryan, but that officers did not arrive at the McDonald's until approximately 10:28 p.m. The edited body camera footage shows Ryan being asked to put his hands up by an officer via his cell phone, and he responds that they were up. The footage does not make clear what behavior necessitated the subsequent use of force. We know little about this tragedy because MCPD has yet to release the unedited camera footage. With any such police-involved shooting, but particularly one which involves a fatality, there needs to be a full investigation, both to ensure that the department has full information about whether the officers on the scene did or did not follow proper procedure, or whether the procedures themselves need re-examination, and to ensure the public that MCPD operates with transparency, accountability, and justice. As the county's created Police Advisory Commission, we are calling for the release of the unedited body camera footage. The purpose of the PAC, appointed in light of the murder of George Floyd, is specifically to help Montgomery County address disproportionate policing of Black and brown people, and particularly excessive use of force. The communities we represent are horrified by these incidents, as Ryan's death is the 4th incident involving our county police in the last 2 years. We believe it is meaningful that the commission includes representatives of the MCPD and hope that they will work to ensure that the unedited body camera footage is made available to the public. In light of this incident and the subsequent press conference, we are asking the following. Number 1, why was this call initially deemed a low priority? Number 2, how does MCPD respond to mental health calls? Number 3, what are the current barriers that prevent MCPD from providing more information about the incident, and particularly the release of the raw body camera footage? And number 4, what is the estimated time frame for the Howard County State's Attorney to complete its investigation and for the findings to be released to the public? We are all residents of Montgomery County and proud to serve on the PAC. We believe deeply that our community can and must do better to address the problem of disproportionate policing and the consequent loss of trust in law enforcement. Please show us that our hope is not in vain. Sincerely, the Montgomery County Policing Advisory Commission. I open it up to the floor for any comments or suggestions or anything like that that we can, try to capture.
I'm gonna have to agree with Eric. It looks a little bit different. Maybe I'm reading, because I read the last version from Caroline and Eric. This looks slightly different from the one that I received from Caroline and Eric. I could be wrong.
Assistant Chief Patil has his hand up, and so does Shabab.
Okay, so Assistant
And
Chief,
then
I'll go
Eric.
to you. Assistant Chief, I'll go to you, and then Shabab, and then I'll go to Eric.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Just one point of just factual clarity is there's a reference there that an officer was on the phone and told him to put his hands up. That was one of our call takers at the 911 center. It was not a police officer that is heard on that video.
Okay, so
In reference
Chief
to the
Patel,
phone call.
okay, so Chief Patel, so before I go to the next person, so the person that was speaking to Ryan in the video is not an MCPD officer. It's a crisis person. It's like a crisis social worker, let's say.
No, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. It was either a 911 call taker or it was a 911 supervisor. It was
Not
somebody
a
from our
police
communication center. Right, they're
Got
part of the police department, but they're civilian employees who run our 911 center.
Okay, so Carlos, can you just note to change the wording of that so we can make sure that part is accurate at least, please?
Yeah,
I'm
I just pointed. I'm sorry. Just saying. So it's a person at the 911 call center. We can't confirm what type of position they're in. I'm just
A civilian employee at the
civilian
911.
employee.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. That's an important distinction. Shabab, you had your hand up after, and then I'll go to Eric, and then Alicia, I'll come back to you. Shabab, go ahead.
Sure. I think Kate's email was really helpful in terms of contextualizing the low priority of the call, and I think we discussed that at length at the last meeting as well. I still think it's helpful to put this question in for the record. Looking at the draft that was shared by Eric on August 3rd at 5:41 p.m., the questions are slightly more detailed and I feel perhaps a little bit more helpful. So the first question in the version from the date I just read out reads, "It is our understanding that this call was initially deemed a low priority. If so, why was that? And how did a low priority call lead to a fatality before the complete complement of negotiators and crisis team members could be deployed?" So I think I appreciate that wording a little bit better. So it might be helpful to look at the phrasing of those questions and maybe insert those in. But would love to hear from Eric now that he's able to join us.
Or why this was the version that I thought we were voting on.
I apologize, everyone. I don't know why in my mind I thought our meeting started at 7 o'clock instead of 6:30, and that's
It's okay.
Can I first have a parliamentary question? Has a motion been made to adopt this letter?
No.
So right now we're going through the letter first to see if
Okay.
there are any additional changes that
All
need
right.
to be made. So
All
not a
right.
motion.
I would like to move then that the version of the letter that we consider be the letter that was circulated the one that Alicia just referred to, that Carolyn and I did some edits with.
And the one that Shabab just read.
No, the one that Shabab.
That's the one I'm actually looking
I would
at.
like to move that be the letter that we consider and that amendments to the letter be made to that version.
So I guess,
Would you like me to forward this to Carlos so he can post this version, because it is slightly different?
Carlos should have it. It was circulated.
I can read it.
I have it as well, and I'm happy to send it directly to everyone at this time.
Eric, I would recommend that you do that, and I think focus on the questions, because I think from what I understand, that would be the only substantive change, and then we can get that, because it's important that we get this done this meeting.
So if I say, if I address this to PAC at MC Gov, et cetera, will that get to everyone?
Do the pound sign, and then PAC.
Yeah, and I can share it through the chat.
But I do
there's
also,
a lot.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say there's a lot of edits in the letter. So if you get it as a Word document, I recommend.
I'm going to send it. I beg your pardon. My intention was to send it without the review, so that you would see it without the edits. You would see it in final markup form.
Right. Yeah. So that's basically all I was going to say. It was just if you look at it in Word, you can just under review, you can look at it with no markup, and it will just show you all the changes already adopted. So yeah.
I do also want to note that the second paragraph seemed to have some. I like the way that it enumerated very important points. I just that was not in the one that we were looking at. So everyone now has this letter that enumerates very important points with any such police involved shootings. Point 1, 2, 3. I like that. That's what I had been in support of. That version.
Okay, just sent
everyone should be getting that.
A copy of this to you, Carlos.
So Caroline, I think that too was not in the version that we were all looking at.
Sorry, will you read that language again? Because I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, the second paragraph, we know a little about this tragedy, that paragraph.
Yeah.
Then he says police involved.
Do you all want me to share it? I have it in front of me right now.
Yeah, why don't share it? That would be great.
Okay.
share your screen, please.
Number one, to ensure, number 2. I thought that was powerful.
All right. So here it is.
Lisa, I think the language is there. It was just a numbering that was removed.
The number was removed. I like
the number.
Yeah.
So the numbering was removed in when I received the markup. So Caroline was the last one to edit it.
I think I took the numbering out. I condensed I condensed that into 2 points.
Yeah. So it wasn't. There's no wording that's different. It's just the numbers.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, but I like the way that the letter.
Yes. Hold on. Eric, go ahead. Sorry, Alicia. Go ahead, Eric.
The term both is used. There are 3 discrete points. One is that the department has full information. Second is whether the procedures themselves need re-examination. And third is to assure the public that the MCPD operates with transparency, accountability, and justice. You don't say 3 points.
That's why I edited it.
So Eric, give me 1 second. So Eric, I understand what you're saying, but so when the edits were made, it appeared to me that the wording wasn't different. All that was removed was the use of numbers. And so it was a formatting point. So, and it seemed to just make sense because that was an edit that Carolyn made, I accepted that edit. I didn't think it made sense to just keep the way you edited it. I didn't think to keep that edit just to keep it for keeping its sake. It seemed to flow better without the numbers. Does that make sense?
No, I think it flows better with the numbers.
So that's why
that's-
we're having this. So that's why we're having the conversation now. Yeah, that's why we're having the conversation now to see if that makes sense. But I sent out, Susan sent out the document that had the last edits, which Caroline was the last person to edit it. So you guys are saying that
the one that I had was this one. Yeah. Right.
Susan sent out a version. It says both to ensure the department has full information about whether the officers did or did not follow procedure, whether the procedures need examination, and to ensure the public operates with the MCPD operates with transparency. That's 3 points.
So you're taking issue with the use of the word both then. So then remove the word both. That's fine.
Okay, so it's not to ensure the public, it's to assure the public. ASSURE. I mean, there were a bunch of edits.
Okay, so do you have a list of specific edits that you would like us to edit right now?
I sent over, and Carlos had it, and I made a motion that be the version that we consider. You can call for the question, you can reject my motion if that's what you want. But I mean, Carol and I spent a fair deal of time, trying to write a strong piece. And I'm taken aback, that an hour before the meeting, another version is circulated.
But Eric, with all due respect, the version that was circulated was the version that Carolyn edited. That's the version that was circulated.
Caroline and
she was the last person that edited it, and that's the version that got sent to everybody. Your version wasn't dismissed, neither was hers. It was both of your edits that were combined there. There were some edits that she made that changed some of your formatting, so we just accepted it, and that's what got sent to everybody.
See Shabab with her hand up and Kate with her hand up as well.
Shabab, go ahead, and then we'll go to Sergeant Brewer.
I was just going to say, I know there's a few stylistic differences, but if we could maybe focus our attention on the substantive edits, that might be a better use of our time. And I think with the questions, and I think Caroline was saying this earlier, maybe we can chat a little bit about reverting to the other set of questions.
It is the version that I edited. It was the last one that everybody saw. So if you don't like my edits, that's fine. I don't really have strong feelings about that, but I don't want people to think that somehow there was some kind of underhanded effort by Carlos or somebody to send a wrong version, because this is the version that we circulated. And so again, I don't care. I have no strong feelings about whether you reject my edits. That's totally fine, but let's just make sure people know what happened.
Yeah, and that's important to note. There wasn't your version wasn't dismissed, Eric. So to be taken aback, your version wasn't dismissed. And you guys worked hard on it. We accepted the last edits that were sent. That's what everybody got. There's a motion by Eric to use his version. Do we have a second for that for that motion? Not hearing a second, we will not use Eric's version.
Seconded. I'm raising my hand.
I can't see you, Alicia. So that's
I'm sorry.
I can't see you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a second. So we have a second. Okay, so we're gonna use Eric's letter, which is in front of everybody. Do we have any edits to make to Eric's letter?
But don't we have to have a vote on if you made a motion to replace the letter, since the other one was
correct? So
And
please vote.
Sergeant Brewer has her hand up as
Kate
well.
is still waiting to speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sergeant Brewer, and then we'll go to vote on the motion. Go ahead, Sergeant Brewer.
Thanks. And honestly, it's a minor point, so I don't know if it's going to change anything. But if you look at what's on the screen right now, that first point, the call was initially deemed a low priority, and I kind of said it in the email, but I just want for clarification. There's really call types, but then there's priority types. But a low priority can be everything from a theft occurred earlier to what this was initially classified as was a fail to pay and a trespassing call. The low priority didn't have anything to do with the mental health low priority. So I don't know if that needs to be changed, and maybe it doesn't, and maybe you guys, the intent is still the same there, but initially just simply being deemed a low priority does not initiate any kinds of negotiators or mental health response. It's simply just the priority with which police would be dispatched. So a high priority would be an in progress call where somebody is either, a person is either injured, being threatened, or a physical fight or something like that, that's in progress at that moment. But if there is what this was initially classified as due to the information provided by the caller, it was a trespassing and a fail to pay call. So there was no, it's deemed that's looked at as a property crime, so no person crime in progress. So it's dispatched, it's triaged and just dispatched after high priority calls where people are involved, because that's the information we had at the time. So I don't know if that needs to be reworked or if you guys are okay with that. I just want to make sure everybody understands low priority meant doesn't have any reference to who's going to respond and what kind of call type it is. It's just the level of response, if you will, and how it's triaged.
I think that the low priority referred to the officers showing up like an hour or almost 2 hours later.
But Sergeant Brewer,
I understand, but the reason they responded was because that call got triaged. Because
I understand.
Or really
I understand. Yeah.
I understand but we would never send negotiators to a trespassing call, I guess.
This is Caroline. I think your answer is I understand that. And I think that's very helpful, which makes it, I think, even more important that we get something in a writing in response, because it produces a confusion clearly among us and among the public, I think even more so. So I think we should definitely leave this question in and you can be answered in that way, as well as, but also to address the point that Alicia just made about how long it took.
Yeah, and I guess just also for information, the officers might not have even known that call existed because it hadn't been dispatched yet. So it's very possible they did not even know that call. So again, I don't know if it's just really informational. I'm not saying you have to remove it, add it, or anything. I just want to make sure that everybody understands how that can happen. Yeah.
And I think that's good context, which is, for example, Caroline's edit to that question would have gotten that answer. So the reason it was low priority was because of everything she just said. That's why that edit to that question, that's why that question was broken down into two questions, because the first part was that, like what Sergeant Brewer just said, it was viewed as a property crime and refusal to pay. So that's why it was deemed a low priority, for lack of a better word, because it doesn't even sound like you guys use that word, right, Sergeant Brewer?
But it's good that it's worded just this way so that, from a layman's perspective, from the citizen's perspective, this really speaks more. It gives the tone and flavor of what a lay person would perceive to have been going on. And so it's excellent that Sergeant Brewer has responded, but see the way that the question is worded, it would elicit that kind of education for
I
all.
agree. I agree. I think unfortunately we use our terms when we shouldn't, right? Like we know in our head what they mean. So to say it was deemed a low priority, I think is misleading. So I completely understand that, Ms. Hudson. I think that's
so then Sergeant Brewer, how would you word that then? Because we don't want it to be misleading. So how would you word that?
I don't necessarily know it needs to be. I just want to make sure. Can I think about that? And then I don't want to take up any time. I'll type something in here. But again, like I said, I don't necessarily know it needs to. The way I initially read it, I didn't know if everybody understood that there was information on the initial call that would lead us to immediately send negotiators, I guess. There was nothing on that initial call that would lead to that. And I think that's the way I read that question. And maybe I'm reading it incorrectly. I just wanted to say it just for clarification.
Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Brewer. I appreciate that.
Assistant Chief Patil has his hand up.
Did we have anybody after Sergeant Brewer, Carlos? I can't see the full screen.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Assistant Chief Patil, go ahead.
Okay, not to belabor the point. I think I understand where Sergeant Brewer, where her head is on this. Like, I think at the end of the day, as we prioritize calls, this was a lower priority call in the scheme of things. It is what it is. I think combining that statement with the negotiator and crisis team piece is what makes it confusing. Maybe if you were to bifurcate that into two different questions, and so saying it is our understanding that this call was initially deemed a low priority. Okay, that's factual. I think, but I think then maybe a second question really on its own: in what circumstances, would negotiators or crisis team members be deployed. That might be a better one, because what's happening, I think, by the way it's being written, combined together, it makes it seem like because of X, then Y. And it really, the fact that a trespassing call with no threat or no violence or is low priority. I mean, we have to prioritize calls, right? If somebody's on this call, their family member was getting hurt, you want us to go there before the trespassing. So I think my suggestion would be to try to bifurcate those issues.
Yeah, and I will say I agree with that suggestion. I think that makes sense, because I think, and again, not to labor the point, but that was one of the things that Caroline said. They broke that question into 2 questions, because again, with 2 questions like that, it does look like one of those if X then Y. So Carlos, can you?
I think.
Go ahead, Alicia.
I think we are belaboring this, and I think that what we want is the answers, and what Sergeant Brewer has contributed and what Chief Patel has contributed are excellent. But again, when those kinds of responses and education for us would not have been elicited if not for the questions. So I don't think that we have to be so artful, so focused on being artfully perfect in the construction of our question. We are citizens.
I agree,
we are not
100%.
police officers. We're not police officers. This is the question. This is what we saw.
I agree with Alicia so much, and I would like to just suggest that we move the question, and we could spend all day wordsmithing this, but some of us have already spent a lot of time. The rest of us have all looked at it. We could take issue with a word here and there, but I think let's get this out the door. And we have other things to discuss, I think, tonight.
Okay, so no edits to that question, then we're leaving it as is?
I think we should just move forward, but that's
with the full appreciation of what Sergeant Brewer and Chief Patel have just shared. And I'm absorbing and hearing that very important information and knowledge for me. Okay, so yeah, I like the questions.
Okay. So I'll ask again, are there any other edits that need to be made to this letter that you guys want to make?
I see Chief Patel's hand is still raised.
I think he just left it up from before. Is that accurate, Chief Patel?
Yep, my bad. I fixed it.
No, you're good. You're good. Any other edits that need to be made to the letter in front of you? Okay, so do we have a motion to accept this letter as the letter that we will release tomorrow?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So now we take a vote in the chat. Everybody vote aye or nay to the motion to release this letter as the letter that we will release tomorrow, as early as the sun allows us to release it. No, it will not be released at 6 a.m. I promise you guys. All right. The ayes have it. Oh, Mr. Ricks has it. No, that's fine. Majority has it. Majority of the ayes have it. Okay, Carlos. So we will release this letter tomorrow. You should have this version of it, but let us know if you don't before the end of the day. But I think you have it. So we will release this one. Great work, everybody, on making sure we worked on this. We took our time with this, which I think was important. We wanted to make sure that what we put out there as our first, what was the word that you used, Eric? Our first public statement, I'll use that. We wanted to make sure that we captured both the urgency of the work that we were doing, the feelings that were attached to it, right, which I think was important, but also the need for facts, right, and the need to be able to get as much information as we could. So great work. I appreciate you all. Okay, so let's move to the next part. So we have about 40 minutes to go, which seems like we're going to be able to end fairly early. So we have the next public hearing, and you guys should have received, no, you guys wouldn't have received it. By Friday, you will receive, so you guys remember we had asked Chief Jones and Sergeant Brewer a bunch of questions on, Carlos, do you remember what it was? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Well, okay, so there was the questions that we discussed on March
Mhm.
9th. Those were like
Mhm.
19 or 20 questions. However, I don't think that was my understanding of what the next public hearing would be. The next public hearing, to my understanding, was a follow-up on the drug enforcement public hearing that we had. So, we heard from the public, or the PAC heard from the public, and now the second step would be to get a response from MCPD and the state's attorney's office and any other stakeholders that you believe would add more to the discussion based on what the information that you all gathered on drug enforcement policy and arrests in Montgomery County. That's my understanding.
Okay, so
And
The-
Donovan, if I could, the other piece I'll just add is we're
Gotcha,
required to do an annual forum. We can consider that these public hearings are the forum, because I don't think it's very specific in the statute. But that's
Right.
just something to keep in mind because we're coming up on the 1-year mark.
Okay, so Nadia and myself met with Carlos and Susan, discussed that. So I will clarify your confusion, Carlos. Okay, so there was a request for information from the PAC, from the subcommittee to MPD related to traffic stops. Robin has summarized the response that MPD gave to us, right? You guys are going to receive that by Friday, right? So you're going to receive the summary of the response. Once you receive that, when we have our meeting in August, the shorter one, right? We are going to review this, so that way MCPD can come and debrief us on their responses to this specific request, with the hope being that in September, we have a public hearing about traffic stops, with then the annual forum happening in October, okay? Because we were supposed to have the traffic stop public hearing last month, but we moved it because we didn't have enough time to plan that and the public forum. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. Not hearing a no, that means yes. So you guys will receive that on Friday, and then just review that. If you have any follow-up questions to prepare for that, then just have them ready for the 30-minute meeting that we'll have in August, with the hope being that MCPD and specifically Chief Jones, if not Chief Jones, then either Chief Patel or one of the awesome MCPD folks, and come and answer some of these questions that we had. Okay, with the hope being that then we can have a public hearing on traffic stops. Robin, Justice, and Cherie have done a lot of really, really good work on, one, getting feedback from MCPD, getting the answers that they needed, but then also just coming up with this summary, because there were some answers that still necessitated some questions. So we anticipate that it's going to be super informative. Okay, so you guys will get that on Friday, and you'll review it before we meet again. Now, the last thing. So the public forum, the big annual public forum that we're supposed to do, that is going to be in August. Okay, and we've talked about different forms of outreach that we should do, different organizations that we should reach out to. Nadia and I have begun to do that, right? So have begun to reach out to organizations to try to get not only testimony from their members, but testimony from them in particular pertaining to traffic stops in the county, and just pertaining to policing issues in general. Our goal is to create the most inclusive forum that we could think of, right? And Shabab and I, when Shabab was chair and I was vice chair, talked about the importance of that. This is just continuing a lot of that work. I will say that when we had the last one, a lot of community members felt that us, the commissioners, gave them an opportunity to speak about things that maybe they necessarily hadn't spoken about in a while, right? Did we get some folks who spoke about things that weren't related to it? Yes, that's bound to happen. But it wasn't through no fault. It wasn't because we created an environment that wasn't conducive to people stepping forward, right? These things are tricky for folks to navigate, especially folks that may have some pending litigation going on, or pending cases, or who just have had really traumatic experiences. But I think you guys should feel good about the fact that organizations that we have reached out to, thank you, Alicia. Yes, we have a list of Shabab and I were able to interview with the WUSA 9 reporter. She's going to talk to Nadia and I again. We've reached out to a couple of Spanish-speaking radio stations, so Nadia and I can do maybe some form of PSAs there. But I want you guys to feel good about the fact that no organization that we've reached out to has said no. Okay, so that's good. That means that we are creating the environment where folks feel comfortable at least coming forward and talking to us. Chief Patel, we're going to make them comfortable coming talking to you. Don't worry. It's going to take some work, but we're going to make it happen for you guys. does anybody have any questions about those two next steps, about the public hearing on traffic stops and the annual forum? Does anybody have any questions?
Can you see my hand?
Alicia, yeah, Alicia has her
I
hand
don't.
up.
I just prefer to do this instead of doing every damn thing digitally. I'm going nuts. Okay. Did we give any thought to people being able to testify at the public hearing anonymously? You know, Eric in the hiring subcommittee talked about, you know, maybe there's a way that folks can feel safe, you know, coming and speaking, you know, truthfully and openly.
Yeah, so Nadia and I, when we met with Carlos and Susan last week, we talked about that, and that we are going to make that an option. And that was a great suggestion, right? We felt that even if we can get folks to submit written testimony, right, where again they don't have to attach their name or any identifying information, but we can then share it at this at one of these forums. I think that would be helpful. Also, folks that can, if they do feel comfortable testifying on camera, but we can figure out a way to either distort their voice or block their face or something like that, just something like that. So yes, the plan is to figure out the best way to do that makes them as comfortable as possible, right? Because for us, listen, we'll read off some statements if we have to, right? We'll make it work. The important thing is that they can go back to their communities feeling safe and not have to worry that something's going to happen to them. So yes, and that was a great suggestion.
I have a comment on, I have a comment on that. Just allowing people to testify live anonymously may be an issue in terms of security. I know that the council has not allowed that in the past just because, you know, we've heard from different organizations through Zoom meetings that people have done things that are deemed inappropriate in a public setting like that. So if we could restrict people to submitting written testimony anonymously, that would be so much more it would just be easier for us to handle and control. I understand the want for people to be able to do that. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to kind of create a system where, you know, we know that no one's going to abuse that. You know, and also to that point, I will say, so Nadia and I, and a couple of the organizations that we spoke to said that they would be happy compiling written statements. So from folks that they interact with, right, and submitting that as not a group testimony, but submitting that written testimony together, and then that would then alleviate alleviate us having to try to figure out a way to do that anonymous video testimony, Carlos. So that way they're submitting it through these organizations. That way it's the organization's name on it, not the person's name on it. So we're gonna try to make it as safe as possible for folks. Right. Eric had his hand up as well.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you. Briefly, would it be possible for folks to submit a pre-recorded, 2-minute or 3-minute statement in which they were able to do it anonymously or in some way, and it could be screened? I mean, that would be still another potential option that might be for folks who are less inclined to try to write something. An orally presented statement might be much more comfortable in their native language and so forth.
Yeah, that is possible. So we allowed that the first public hearing as well. So you could submit anonymous written testimony, audio testimony, or video testimony. So we can do that again. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Great suggestion, Jerome and Eric, because that I think you're right. If they do it even in their native language, I think that may also make them feel a little bit more comfortable, right? Because some folks aren't necessarily comfortable translating their words from Google Translate or whatever the case may be. So that could work too. Okay. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions about those next two forum-like events, public hearing and the forum?
Open, could you just remind us the proposed dates or time frame if we don't have dates?
Yeah. So, and I'm going to stress tentatively because we all know some things tend to go wrong. But our plan is for you guys to receive Robin's summary by Friday. On the next meeting that we have, which is on the 23rd, we will review the questions together and make sure that, if there's any other ones that you guys want to add, we add them there. With the point being to then invite Chief Jones, or if he can't make it, then that would be you, Chief Patel, to answer some of our questions. And Sergeant Brewer, since you did such a wonderful job of answering our questions back in March, putting you back on so you can answer some of these questions too. So that'll be at the first meeting in September, because that's our 1.5-hour meeting. So that'll give us more time to do that, with the hope being that then the meeting after that would be our hearing on traffic stops. So fingers crossed, okay? But I have to ask Robin if he agreed, because the last email I sent to Robin, I said, does that make sense to you? And he didn't respond to me because I know he's traveling and stuff. So it's okay. But that's the time frame that I think we're looking at. Okay. Good. Okay. Does anybody have any new business that they would like to say, share, speak about? We have 30 minutes left. I'd like to let you go early. So does anybody have anything that you guys want to share before we wrap? No? All right, guys. Well, this has been an eventful meeting as always. You guys are rock stars. You guys are wonderful at what you do. The community is very lucky to have you. Chief Patel, Sergeant Brewer, thank you as always for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rest of your night. And we will see you guys on August 23rd for the shorter August PAC meeting, okay? Have a great night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.